So here's everything we learned at the Plaid event last night. Well, everything I learned anyway. I don't know what you learned, but I learned a little bit. There wasn't a whole lot of new information from Elon. I think this was one of the events you really had to be there for because there was a lot of engineers in the audience afterwards that explained a lot of things to some people. Thankfully, they recorded it. I kind of wanted to hate on the event right afterwards because it wasn't that informational, but I think the specs and everything we learned, the little things that we learned, I think are enough to make it a pretty good event for a live streaming event anyway. I'm sure it was a lot better if you were there. Actually, if you want to learn a little bit more in depth about things, Drag Times was there and he did a great in-car video of just playing with everything on it. I think he did a really good job. Here's the top 7 things I learned from last night's event, the Plaid Model S. We learned it was a new battery pack, still 18650s, but a new battery pack. The motors have carbon fiber sleeves to hold everything together. The car has a heat pump, which we knew was going to have a heat pump. It'll cool down faster in between drag race runs. It has high-powered USB charging, wireless charging, and USB-C charging, up to 36 watts. Plus there's an AC outlet. Multiple Bluetooth devices can be hooked up at once. Finally, we're finally out of 2015. This is ridiculous. A huge power curve. I wouldn't even call it a power curve. It's more like a power plateau. 1,000 horsepower all the way up to 200 miles an hour. And the 7th thing is deliveries start now. A few deliveries start now. The things that weren't talked about, FSD subscription. Nothing about the Cybertruck, Semi, or Roadster. I mean, this was the Plaid event, although a Cybertruck would be a part of that. Why no talk about the long-range Model S? Why is it taking so long? No update on the 4680 cells? Full self-driving beta release to everyone? And what was that ramp for at the event? I still don't know. I never saw anybody talk about it. And I guess what the crowd decided was everyone wants waypoints for navigation. That was not really talked about, but I guess you guys twisted Elon's arm and we're gonna get that eventually. Eventually. So let's break these down. The batteries. It is a new battery pack. There are 4 separate cells. Before with the Model S, there was like 7 different cells, or like 7,000 batteries. Now there are long cells, or long big packs inside of this giant pack, just like the Model 3 and the Model Y. It is still the 18650s, and there's a reason for that. Here's my understanding why. You heard there's really big power out of this car. 1,020 horsepower, 1,080 horsepower. 1,000 horsepower. That's a lot. When the last performance version was, what, 780 or 760 or something like that? A lot of people were thinking, it's gotta have the 2170 cells in it, but you can't have this kind of power output from a 2170 cell. Let me explain why. Now, you can have the same size battery packs, but the power output is a little different. Basically, a battery rolled up is round. If you unroll it, if you unroll that jelly roll, there's a tab on one end and tab on the other. This is the 18650. The power has to go across, has to get out of the battery somehow. And there's 2 tabs right there. Well, if you have a 2170 cell, that has to travel farther. The battery's more dense, but it takes longer for the power to come out. So you can't get that burst of energy. Now, the 4680 cells are taller, but the power only has to go from the top to the bottom because of their tabless design. The tabless design is not really tabless because they just perforate the whole top. And as you roll that up, the power just has to go straight. So it only has to go 46 millimeters versus these giant distances. So you don't want this in a 1,000 horsepower car. They are fully redesigned. They're totally different chemistry. It's probably a lot like what the 2170 cells are as far as the chemistry inside the battery. It's probably the same as that. It's just the power can travel out that much faster, which gives you a lot more power, gives you a lot more torque, gives you more energy, and that thing's gonna suck up some power. When he first mentioned that they were gonna be the same batteries, I was bummed. I was like, oh man, old technology. But after really thinking about it, I think it's the right move. I mean, obviously, I'm not an engineer. I don't work for Tesla or anything, but it sounds like the right move to me. Number 2, the carbon fiber sleeves. Now what this is, it's a carbon fiber glove basically around the motor, and it holds everything in nice and tight. With the Plaid, there's 3 400 horsepower motors, or 400 newton meters of torque motors. So you have 1,200 horsepower, kind of. The batteries can't supply that to it, but it's up to 1,200 horsepower. This sleeve, this glove holds the motor together because it spins up to 20,000 RPMs. That is super fast. And if you're not holding on, I mean, that thing can just explode out of there, and it's pretty crazy. The whole system that they have for the two motors, they're individual, although it looks like one just giant motor here. Almost looks like a flat 6 motor, but there's 2 individual motors that are totally separate. They have individual torque vectoring, so you start to go sideways around a turn, it can speed that wheel up and slow this one down so you corner better. That's gonna be awesome. They need that for the Y for off-road. Number 3 was the heat pump. We all knew this was gonna have a heat pump, but what they did with that heat pump was they put a giant radiator up there. So now everything can be cooled off faster. It doesn't have to take as long to warm up, I don't think anyway. It does still have that long period of warming up that the Model 3 and the Model Y don't have, because you have so much power dense inside the battery and you're not putting out that much power. You're only putting out 450, 460 horsepower to the Model 3 and the Model Y versus 1,000 with this. I think this will heat up quicker, but also this will cool off quicker when you're on the track and if you're having a track day event and you want to go ride hard. You want to push this thing to its limits and find out what it can and what it can't do. You can do more than 2 laps on a racetrack without it overheating now. Maybe do 3 or 4. Now, Elon mentioned that this has a 36 watt USB charger. So he said you can charge your laptop or you can charge something else. But I saw in the book, in an owner's manual, I think Teslarati or Inside EVs had that posted there, that there's a power outlet inside the center console, a 110 outlet, which is kind of cool. That's kind of limited to what it can put out, but that's pretty cool. Multiple Bluetooth devices hooked up to it. So I ran into this before with the Model Y, having an iPad in there and playing music from that. You can only hook up one device. So if you're playing music through there, you can't have your calls going through the speaker system. You know, this is 2021. It should have happened in 2015, but they're finally getting around to it and figured out how to do this. I mentioned this a few times in some of my videos in the past, but you know, multiple people can play music onto their from their phone to the infotainment system, which I think is really cool looking. If you haven't looked at it, I think it's gonna be really nice. Really fun to play with. A lot of the same stuff, but just in different places and a little bit more things too. Now I mentioned before the power curve. It's not really a curve, it's more like a right turn. It goes straight up and over and it doesn't really drop off like the others did. You know, 200 miles an hour, you still pretty much have 1,000 horsepower, which is absolutely ridiculous. At a quarter mile, you're doing 155. I think by the end of 1 mile, you probably would be close to 200, maybe 180 miles an hour, 190, and still have pretty much full power. That's gonna be ridiculous. And deliveries start last night. 25 people took delivery, kind of. They didn't really take delivery because Drag Times actually talked to a guy from Connecticut. He had to pay the money, but they're still gonna ship it to his house, so he doesn't really take delivery there. He just gave them money a couple days early. But hey, he gets the first one, the first few. I think he said they're gonna deliver about 100 a week, and then by next quarter, 1,000 a week. So, man, I looked at my account and I was supposed to be June delivery. It is not gonna be June delivery at this point, so it says July now. And which is kind of good, because if you notice the flyover videos, there was a lot of Model S's sitting in the dusty parking lot with the windows down, the doors open, and all that dust just sitting on there. Those are dirty, dusty cars. I want the new one. I want a brand new one. Now there's plenty other points that he brought up. The coefficient of drag is super low. These are my notes from last night's thing. Supercharging is at 250 kilowatts right now. Those are going to be able to increase to 280, 300, and 350, like he said. I don't know if the version 3s can be upgraded to that, or if they have to do version 4s for those. He didn't mention anything like that. So it was a lot of things he was just spitting out. The car will read your mind if you want to go into forward or reverse. You can change that though. The acoustic glass, there's 22 speakers, 920 watt sound systems. Should be super awesome with our noise canceling speakers, and for the microphone for your phone. I think they're in the headrest, so it should be really nice and clear. I don't think it's noise canceling from the outside noise inside, maybe with the speakers on, I'm not sure. He didn't mention that, but in the owner's manual it says something about noise canceling for the microphones, which you can turn on and off. The waypoints. He mentioned, someone yelled out waypoints when they were talking about the map, and he just crowdsourced it right there, and he says, does everyone want waypoints? And everyone cheered yes, so he's like, all right, fine, we'll do waypoints, crybabies. I don't think he said crybabies, but I think he mumbled that to himself. The car will guess based off of your calendar, if you have your calendar hooked up to it, where you want to go, so you don't really have to do anything. You can just swipe down on the navigation. It'll determine where you want to go. If it's a weekday when you go to work normally, it'll do that, or home, whatever. So there was a lot of cool stuff at the event. I wish I was there now because I would have been asking a lot of questions to some engineers. Looked like Elon stayed around for the first time and talked to some people on the ramp of the event. That would have been cool to shake his hand, or I don't know if you're allowed to do that, but it would have been cool to talk to some other people and really get some good information from the engineers. What I didn't like about the event was everything was covered up ahead of time. I was watching some people's live streams beforehand, and they had cars covered up. They had the wrecked cars covered up. They didn't really do anything with the outside. It was just cool stuff to see. Some of it was able to be seen. And then right before the event, which was running late, they pulled everything off in the dark. So you really couldn't see anything. It would have been cool to go, I guess it would have been cool to be there to find out from the engineers, what about those wrecked cars? What about that ramp? What about the coefficient of drag that they just mentioned as the lowest coefficient of drag? What caused all that? What's new underneath the car? Again, that ramp. What the hell was that ramp for? Just stuff like that. It seems like they could have added more into the 30-minute presentation. They could have actually pre-recorded some of that like Apple does now and then played some of that stuff for us and had that in there. Maybe they will come out with that eventually later on, but they look like they put a lot of energy into the event for 30 minutes of online. You know, it was after midnight on the East Coast here when it first ended, and I was kind of a little disappointed until I really started looking into what was going on. And I'm very excited for this Model S. But I'm excited to get all the stuff, play with the car, do 0 to 60 runs, scare the crap out of people, and just have a blast with this car. If you have any ideas of videos that you definitely want to see, leave those in the comments down below. What did you learn about the event that I didn't talk about? Did you get to go to the event? Do you not care? Do you think it's the same basic car with just a little bit more power? I'm interested. Leave all those comments down below and we can discuss peacefully and politely, and have a great day. Stay awesome, stay positive, and I'll catch you on the next one. See ya.